Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Vaccaro. I'm here representing SEI as our development manager and the moderator for today's webinar, Resources for Energy and Agriculture, to discuss state funding available for energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies. Speaking today with us is Ellen Ross, the Solar Forward Program Manager for SEI, Michael Turner, the Director of Building Innovation and Energy Finance with the Colorado Energy Office, Will Manis, the Colorado Energy Office's Agricultural Energy Efficiency Program Manager, as well as Sam Anderson, the Program Administrator for the Colorado Department of Agriculture. So huge thanks for all of our panelists here today. A few really quick Zoom logistics. You can hover over your Zoom bar at the bottom, represented right here with this gray square, to see all of your chat, raise hand, and Q&A options. For the duration of this webinar, please use the Q&A function to ask any questions. You may raise hand to get the host's attention, though we would like to save questions for the end, and chat to talk with other attendees in the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties, you may use the chat as well, and I'll be able to monitor. For a quick explanation of SEI, or Solar Energy International, our aim is to empower students, alumni, and partners to expand a diverse, inclusive, well-trained, and educated solar energy and electricity workforce. Our aim is to promote sustainable economic growth, mitigate climate change, and support energy independence. We're a nonprofit educational institution for 30 years, actually celebrating our 30th this year, as one of the industry leaders in renewable energy training, education, awareness, and community development. The contents of today's webinar are to provide information about resources available in the Colorado for energy efficiency and renewable energy for agricultural enterprises. Ellen Ross will be discussing Solar Forward's work to bring renewable energy resources to rural communities. And the Colorado Energy Office will focus on agricultural energy efficiency and technical services. Finally, the Colorado Department of Agriculture will focus on energy grants and assistance for Colorado agrarian producers and farmers. All right, and with that, we'd like to hand it over to our first panelist, Ellen Ross with Solar Forward.
Excellent, thank you, Elizabeth. I share my screen, and we're gonna start with a brief chat response question for you all. If you could let us know what are the largest barriers to implementing energy efficiency and renewable energy in agriculture for you. You can go ahead and chat your response. I'll pull up my chat box so we can look at that. All right, thank you everybody for contributing. See regulation with utilities, Excel. Wide geographic dispersion, Excel again, access to technology, cost. All right, looks like they've stopped coming in, the responses. So thank you everybody for responding. So that just gives us like a better idea. Education, thank you, Tim Olson. Complexity, permitting, a lot of the general things that may have been barriers in the past. So thank you for contributing that information. So it gives our presenters from the Colorado Energy Office and the Colorado Department of Agriculture a better idea of what might be inhibiting you or your customers from using the funding that's available. Finance. Thank you, Raman. Okay. All right. I'm going to get started with a little bit of more background about Solar Forward from Solar Energy International. So Solar Forward began in Delta County in 2015. It was originally called the Economic Revitalization Through Solar Program because it came out of the idea that when the Elk Creek mine closed in Delta County, SEI wanted to see if they could work to develop a program that could support rural economic development through solar markets. So in working in Delta County across in about 3 years, Solar Forward was able to quadruple the workforce capacity of the installer that we are partnered with. And that amounted to about 400 kilowatts across 60 new PV systems through the Solar Forward program. And I'll get more into what Solar Forward entails here in a second. But this is just a little bit about how the program got started. And since 2015, we have had the opportunity to work across Colorado in about 8 different communities all over the state. And Solar Forward really works to bring more local energy production and resilience, and the resilience that comes with energy independence to rural communities. So what is Solar Forward exactly? So I get to leverage the technical expertise of an industry-leading solar technical training facility to help communities meet their sustainability goals, achieve economic development benefits, and create jobs in the solar industry. I offer free technical consulting as well as access to our Solar Forward toolkit, which was compiled by industry experts in order to make it easier for communities to launch their own solar campaigns. And then ultimately, I am working towards workforce development and training. And for that, I offer course credits for SEI courses so that communities can grow their workforce capacity in order to meet a growing solar market demand, which is created through the Solar Forward marketing toolkit and solar campaigns that I work with local communities, local community members to create. So our impact to date, we've worked with communities to install 2.6 megawatts of solar across about 367 new systems, creating 23 new jobs in rural communities, and then millions of dollars reinvested in those local economies. If you think about it, any amount of electricity that's not having to be imported into the community by a generation plant somewhere far off, those are dollars that can be reinvested in the local economy. And then we've had hundreds educated on the benefits of solar energy and energy efficiency through outreach and education and events through solar campaigns. Thank you all so much for listening to that brief presentation on Solar Forward and my work in rural communities. We wanted to leave plenty of time for the Department of Agriculture and the Energy Office to discuss their funding opportunities. But if you would like to contact me and learn more about how I can help promote solar campaign in your community for energy independence and resilience with renewable energy and agriculture, that is my contact information. Ellen Ross, I am the Solar Forward Program Manager. You can reach me at ellen@solarenergy.org, and my phone extension is 116 from our SEI phone number. So go ahead and reach out to me if you'd like more information. And now I believe I'm going to hand it over to Michael and stop my screen sharing. All right. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thanks, Ellen. Really appreciate all the resources that you guys are providing to rural communities for renewable energy resources. And I think the Energy Office is very excited about this collaboration and our ongoing collaboration. Again, my name is Michael Turner. I'm the Director of Building Innovation and Energy Finance at the Colorado Energy Office. Throughout the years, the Energy Office has really been, our mission has been to implement the climate and energy goals of the state. And a large part of that is really identifying, first off, what are the barriers for industries and homeowners and schools, et cetera, ag, and what resources can we provide to make it easier to access energy efficiency and renewable energy. And so if Ellen, you could, or sorry, Elizabeth, if you could go to the next slide. I just wanted to touch on a little bit about why I think this moment in time is just so exciting. One is because of what's kind of currently going on in the state of Colorado and kind of around the country, is that there's a lot of momentum around renewable energy and greenhouse gas emission reductions. The state passed some legislation a couple of years ago to reduce our greenhouse gases by 90% by 2050. Governor Polis has set a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2040. And then you have a lot of utilities also kind of following up and providing voluntary goals. Xcel Energy, the state's largest utility, has a greenhouse gas goal of 80% reduction by 2030. You have a lot of communities and towns that are also backing that up with their own renewable energy targets or climate change goals. On the other side of this is that the Energy Office has dedicated significant resources over the last 8 years specifically to the ag sector. So identifying, as you guys all mentioned earlier on, what are those main barriers? A lot of education, access to technical resources, and financing. And so I think we're really excited about, one, the momentum that's happening, but two, in order for customers, ag producers, local communities to actually make these investments, they have to have access to those resources. And so I'm really pleased to be here today with Will Manis in our office and Sam Anderson from the Department of Agriculture to talk about exactly what resources, especially technical and financial resources, are available to the ag community in Colorado. So with that, I will hand it over to Will.
All right, great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, SEI, and thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. And we're officially halfway through the work week, so celebrate. Next slide, please, Elizabeth. As Michael mentioned, I'm Will Manis. I'm the program manager of the Agricultural Energy Efficiency Program here at the Energy Office. It's been around, as Michael mentioned, for 8 years, 7 years through the implementation process. So we'll kind of walk through exactly what the program looks like, maybe how you can utilize it, and the funding resources that are out there to help get projects off the ground, save money, save energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. So let's start with some background. The program serves any producer in Colorado with over $4,800 in annual energy expenses. These do not include transportation expenses, but think like motors, pumps, lighting, fixed equipment, energy expenditures. And Resource Innovations, who's the program's contracted team of engineers, will serve as a producer's energy coach. And we'll kick off the program and our engagement with producers with a free energy audit. Then we will compile an audit report listing energy saving opportunities we discovered, funding options that are available out there, all important grant funding options in particular, and then the all important payback periods as well to see how long it'll take, even with grant funding, to pay off some of these projects if a producer decides to move forward with any of them. So once we deliver that report to the producer, we'll go over that report with the producer, answer any questions they might have, and then the ball's in their court. If they'd like to move forward with any project, which is not a requirement to be enrolled in the program, we will support them in completing rebate and grant funding applications for any funding that they've identified that they'd like to apply for. So oftentimes this funding can look like utility rebates, rebates through the Colorado Energy Office, which can be paired with utility rebates. Those are usually utilized to get projects off the ground pretty quickly. Then there are those larger grant funding opportunities. So NRCS EQIP grants, USDA REAP grants, Colorado Department of Agriculture's Acre 3 grants, which Sam Anderson's going to touch on here in a couple minutes. And then also CPACE financing as well. So a lot of different options out there, a lot of different grant options out there for folks to utilize. And a great way to get it started is with a free energy audit through this program. An important note would be that these services are provided to producers at no cost. That's through this program in the Colorado Energy Office. We cover the energy audits, the audit report development, helping apply for funding, and project verification once projects have been installed, just making sure you're getting the savings you signed up for in the beginning of it all. So as a little side note, typically applications, once they're received to report delivery, that timeline is usually 5 to 8 weeks, allows us to obtain producers' historical energy usage, get data from the site, and then work through the calculations for the report as well. Next slide, please. So I wanted to take just a quick minute to recognize our program partners. There are several groups that must work together really to make this program successful at the end of the day. So we work with various entities shown here to really simplify the process for ag producers as much as we possibly can. We interact with the producer's utility, Colorado Department of Agriculture, NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, and industry groups to continue to get the word out about this no-cost offering. It's been around for 7 years, but we keep running into folks who aren't even aware that this program is available to them. So trying to make sure everyone knows there are resources out there dedicated to the ag sector. Next slide, please. So what have we done to date? We've conducted nearly 300 audits. You can see here 277 over the past 7 years. That's over 40 of the state's 64 counties. And it's a little bit small there, but you can see the vast majority are in Yuma County, Weld County, and then Phillips County. So those are the irrigators and dairies for the most part that have been taking advantage of the program. For the installed and verified projects, we've saved producers over $250,000 and over 2.6 million kilowatt hours. That equates to around 1,900 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So that includes not only the kilowatt hours saved, but natural gas, the therms, LP savings, all the different fuel types. And then the last row in this table shows we've identified an additional 16 million kilowatt hours in savings for producers. You can see that overall producers are implementing about a third of what we recommend on average. Next slide, please. So of those 277 completed audits, the vast majority of them, as I mentioned previously, are irrigation sites. In fact, irrigation accounts for around 63% of all audits that we've completed. And this map highlights really the audits conducted for irrigators specifically, which not surprisingly are located on the eastern part of the state for the most part. Other operations that we've audited included the dairies that I had mentioned, mixed use or other, and then greenhouses. And mixed use and other, the other there applies to cold storage facilities as well. So a lot of work with potato growers down in the San Luis Valley and their cold storage facilities. We're happy to audit those. Next slide, please. So in total, 150 measures or recommendations, as we like to call them, have been verified as installed, with, again, irrigation making up 68% of those, dairies at around 22%, greenhouses up and around 9%, and then refrigeration, a very small portion, but about 1% of all projects that we've verified as installed. This map in particular shows the number of measures installed by county to really illustrate the areas with the highest participation rates. Again, it's a common theme. Yuma County, typically the area with the highest participation, just given the large amount of irrigators they have there and the aging equipment that they also have at those sites. And the list on the right here shows some of the projects that have been verified. Generally, we're looking at high efficiency motors with VFDs, rebowling, LED retrofits and greenhouses. We'll cover that list in a lot more detail here in a couple of minutes. Next slide, please. So overall, really, we try to make it as simple of a 5-step process as possible, or 7 steps if you're wanting to apply for grant funding. And I'll cover those here right now. So next slide, please. So to dig in a bit more into the program details, kind of how it works, the mechanics of it all. Again, we're serving any producer in Colorado with over $4,800 in energy expenses. And really that $4,800 threshold is to ensure we're not capturing hobby farmers in there or folks with really big gardens. This is really dedicated to ag producers at the end of the day. And we received approval actually recently to allow hemp producers into the program. So you can see here, we serve dairies, irrigators, greenhouses, cold storage, poultry and swine feedlots historically. And this year we're gonna hope to serve hemp producers as well. But it is of note that marijuana is not eligible for the program, and marijuana is classified as above 0.3% THC on the plants. But there may be separate programs available for those operations, just depends on what utility territory you're currently in right now. Next slide, please. So I mentioned hemp's now eligible. So a couple of those eligibility requirements are listed here. You must provide proof of registration with CDA. Again, that 0.3% THC threshold. And then audits will not be performed within 30 days of harvest for a variety of different reasons as well. Next slide. Oh, perfect. From the application, it's listed on the website. There's general information section. Then the producer will complete the section that pertains to them in particular. So for example, you can see here, there are specific sections for dairies and irrigators, but there are also areas for greenhouses and hemp producers. Once that application has been filled out and sent in, we'll work with the utility provider to collect at least 24 months worth of electric and natural gas data to help us develop those baselines and figure out exactly how much energy those recommendations will save you at the end of the day. But really at the end of the day, when it comes to filling out this application, a name, a number, your utility is all we need to get started. We're happy to walk through that with you. It can seem a little daunting. It's simple 5 pages, but as everyone knows, 5 pages can be a lot sometimes. So even a name and number, and we'll work through the rest of it with you. Next slide, please. So step 3 is to set up a time to complete the on-farm audit. So our audits follow ASABE 612 standards, and it's a type 2 energy audit. So it's a pretty hefty audit that's needed for grant funding. In particular, NRCS requires these very detailed audit reports. So that's what we'll provide kind of right out of the gate. And that outlines how the farming enterprise is evaluated and reports what components are being considered at the end of the day. This is really where having background or that baseline utility data is critical. So evaluating energy use by certain components and systems can really be difficult if the producer doesn't have system information that's readily available. We're happy to work through that process if it's not, but that really speeds up the process at the end of the day. And in a greenhouse like the one pictured previously, we'll be gathering that information about what's grown, when it's grown, where it's grown, what the conditions are, all that good stuff. But the majority of our audits, again, have been irrigation sites, with biggest question marks there being the condition and the efficiency of a well pump. So if a producer is able to get those tests prior to when we come out to the site and audit, that would be ideal If not, we can help you identify vendors that will provide that for you. Next slide, please. So step 4, working our way through it. Once we've completed that site visit, our engineers will create an audit report, portions of which you can see pictured here. It's really a 2 to 3 page report right out of the gate that provides those measure recommendations and the financial analysis, different funding opportunities, kind of what the site looks like, how you're using the equipment, and then the utility analysis as well. Again, that'll typically be sent back to the producer around 2 weeks after the site visit is completed. And this really is meant to give you a snapshot of what we found before diving into those 20 or 30 page audit reports. If you're looking at grant funding, essentially say, hey, here's what we found. Here are your payback periods. Here's where you can find funding. Here's how much energy you can save. Do you want to move forward? If so, then we'll work towards developing that longer audit report. If you do want to move forward, but only with utility incentives, then this report's really all you need to apply for those utility rebates, as well as Colorado Energy Office funding at the end of the day. So really, it's like the inside cover of a book. You read that to see if you really want to read the rest of the book, which would be that 20 or 30 page audit report. Next slide, please. All right, step 5. So we review the streamline audit report, having a little bit better idea of what measures the producer wants to move forward with and what funding they may want to pursue. And I kind of covered these right out of the gate. But again, the vast majority of folks are looking to utilize incentives through the Energy Office, which can be paired with utility incentives, NRCS EQIP grant funding, which provides significant cost coverage, as well as CDA Acre 3 grant funding, which uses NRCS payment rates, EQIP payment rates, and provides a larger share of funding at the end of the day as well. The quickest and most reliable funding opportunities, again, incentives from utilities. But if you're looking at significant cost coverage for some of these, EQIP and Acre 3 really is the way to go. It's a longer process, but you'll get more cost coverage. So it really just depends on your specific situation, how quick you want to move on things, or if you're looking for maximum cost coverage at the end of the day. Next slide, please. So this is really specific to that EQIP funding and the Acre 3 grant funding that I talked about. So we covered just that 2-page audit report that hopefully gives you everything you need, nothing you don't, to make a decision on what you want to do. If you decide EQIP or Acre 3 is the way to go, then you need this energy management plan. So that's that 20 or 30-page audit report. So we'll work to develop that audit report, which could take up to a month or a month and a half to do. And that really provides the reviewers, so Sam Anderson over at CDA or your NRCS field offices, with a complete picture of exactly what the proposed project looks like, all the calculations that went into making these recommendations, as well as what savings you can get at the end of the day. It includes here, as you can see, results of all the measures, the farm enterprise overview, measure level details, and then most importantly, kind of how we came up with the calculations and what the methodology was there. Next slide, please. So hopefully the ag producer was able to get grant funding or utility funding, whatever it may be. This is step 7, the last step of the program. This is really what it's all about. So we're not only trying to provide technical resources to ag producers to help them identify opportunities, but also implement those opportunities at the end of the day. So this step 7, we'll circle back 6 months to a year, depending on what funding source you apply for. Once we realize you've received any funding, just to verify that those projects were installed, we'll come out, look at those, make sure that you're getting the savings you signed up for in the beginning, energy and dollar savings at the end of the day. That way you have some peace of mind of, hey, okay, I implemented these different opportunities and it's been verified I am getting the savings that I signed up for in the beginning. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd just throw this slide in so you could get an idea of what commonly identified measures tend to be. Again, we work with a lot of irrigators. So some common measures there, those motors and VFDs I talked about, rebowling, a lot of sprinkler system renovations, whether it's low pressure, high efficiency spray nozzles. There are a lot of water savings that can be captured through energy savings as well. And then diesel to electric conversion. Greenhouses, again, LED lighting retrofits, HVAC controls, motors, drives, insulation as well. And then dairies, a lot of similar things, LED lighting, water heating, cooling, heat exchangers, things of that nature. This isn't an exhaustive list, but typically what we identify, and that's common across greenhouses, across dairies, across pivot irrigators at the end of the day. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's it for me. What we have not touched on previously, but it's also available through this program, are technical services relating specifically to renewable energy. So our team's able to provide no-cost preliminary renewable energy assessments to producers who'd like to examine those opportunities. This kind of gives producer a feel for what opportunities are out there, what potential funding may be out there to support those types of projects at the end of the day. And I think that's a good segue to Sam over at CDA, who's going to talk a little bit about the Acre 3 program. And I'm happy to answer any questions, I believe, at the end of the presentation. But thanks you all for your time, and have at it, Sam.
Thank you, Will. Let's see, I believe, Ellen, did you have another survey or something else to add?
I don't have a survey. I think we could anecdotally ask folks what have been, well, how about you go ahead and formulate it?
Sure. Well, another question we were interested in hearing from you all about your experiences is what challenges have you faced in obtaining grants or other economic incentives from utilities and other sources? So please add your experiences in the chat. And with that, I'm going to share my presentation here. See, okay, so as you're putting your answers in the chat, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Ellen, and thanks to SEI for hosting this webinar, and especially thank you all to all of you for attending this webinar. So again, I'm Sam Anderson. I'm the energy specialist at the Colorado Department of Agriculture and the administrator for the Acre 3 grant program. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Acre 3 program and then give you some examples of projects that we have funded in the past. And then I'll talk a bit about our process and how to get people to sign up. So at its core, the Acre 3 program is a voluntary incentive-based infrastructure program that helps Colorado's agricultural producers modernize their equipment and reduce their on-farm energy costs. And we accomplish that by providing skilled technical assistance and funding for the projects. Over the past 6 years or so, we have completed about 138 projects in 26 counties. And those projects amounted to about $3 million in total project costs. Out of that, we've contributed about $1 million in cost share. And we've also leveraged that with over $1 million in federal assistance for those projects. So we've provided a significant cost share for those projects. Those projects also represent about 630 kilowatts of renewable energy production. That's split approximately 50-50 between solar projects and energy recovery hydropower projects, including all of the energy efficiency projects. It amounts to about 1.7 million kilowatt hours per year in annual energy savings, about $175,000 in cost savings, and annual savings in greenhouse gases of about 3 million pounds. At a glance, so the Acre 3 program provides funding and technical services for these projects. And as with the Energy Office's criteria, Colorado producers are eligible. This year, we're also adding agricultural processors. And again, as with the Energy Office, applicants must have energy costs of at least $4,800 a year, not including fuel costs for tractors and so forth. So in addition to Colorado agricultural producers, as I mentioned, we're including processing facilities such as mills, for example, oil mills, cheese, packaging, and cold storage facilities, which have always been part of this. And to get started, we require a technical report. So if it's an energy audit for energy efficiency projects, the Energy Office is the place to start with the reports that Will talked about. But we can also, if we have enough information about the project, and if the project doesn't include energy efficiency, then we can also go directly to a feasibility study for solar or hydropower or another form of renewable energy through the Acre 3 program. So it's important to get a technical report. And for those of you who are installers or contractors out there, we usually begin with a quote from a contractor, but it's important for the applicant to get all of the information that we use. And it's also necessary for us to use the information that's included in an energy audit or a feasibility study to qualify the project. A quote in itself simply doesn't provide enough information. So these technical reports will also not just tell you how much the project will cost, but also tell you why and how to do the project. Maybe even why you shouldn't do a project, but also how to finance it, how to avoid pitfalls or risks that could cause the project to fail. And so one thing that I would like to suggest to all of you who are contractors is that before digging into the details of a bid on a project, if you're looking for assistance from us, let's go ahead and do the technical report. And this will also provide a lot more information to help you sell the project to the applicant and make sure that the project really fits their needs that would be identified in that technical report. This year, the Acre 3 program received $3 million in stimulus money from the legislature. And so I have a very busy year this year trying to spend all this by our deadline, which means that we have to have the money dispersed by the end of June in 2022. Usually I'd have several years to, first of all, get the money under contract and then several years to complete the projects once that money is under contract. But in this case, because this program, like the other federal USDA programs, operate on a reimbursement basis, that means all the projects that are funded this year have to be installed by about mid-May. And then that gives us time to verify the project installation, go out and do an inspection, and then have that money dispersed before June 30th. So that's a big challenge. This year, to help us spend this money a little bit more easily, we're providing up to 65% of project costs as cost share from the Acre 3 program, and up to $500,000 per project or per producer for the projects that they apply for. As Will mentioned, for energy efficiency projects specifically, We use the same payment schedule as the EQIP program. And again, projects must be completed by May 13th. So this year, we're awarding the funding on a bit of a sliding scale. And I just want to point out that almost all the projects that we do are less than about $150,000 in total project costs. So most of these projects are down in this very small box in the lower left. So they'd be funded at about 65%. But as the project increases, that can go up to $500,000. The orange portion represents the cost share covered by the applicant or by other funding sources such as USDA or utility incentives that can be, when they can be stacked with Acre 3 funding. The blue portion represents the Acre 3 funding here. So I'll go through some pictures and examples of some of the projects that we are funding this year. Will covered some very good examples of many of these projects. Among the energy efficiency projects, there are about 36 different categories of projects. And in the picture here, those 4 tanks in a row, there are part of an energy recovery system in a dairy. Here are some, these pictures highlight some of those project types specifically in dairies, but they include energy, heat exchangers, plate coolers, variable speed drives or variable frequency drives with premium motors, compressor heat recovery, tankless water heaters, which are also often a good fit in greenhouses. Dairies, it turns out they use washing machines almost 24/7. And so there are often opportunities to upgrade those. Radiant heaters, LED lightings and building insulation, exhaust fans and circulation fans, which are also one of the top categories of energy efficiency projects that we do in greenhouses as well. We're doing some demonstration projects this year, including anaerobic digesters. We've been pursuing these for many years, but the economics have not really been present for these projects until just in the last 18 months or so with new carbon markets, first in California and now carbon markets that are approved in Colorado. So there are about a dozen of these projects in development right now. The one in the picture here was one of the largest anaerobic digesters in the world that was just outside of Greeley and unfortunately was shut down a few years ago. But we provided seed money for that project about 12 or 13 years ago. Another type of project that we're looking at doing some demonstration projects of solar hot water installations at dairies and greenhouses. Right now, I don't know of any examples of these in those applications, but we have a lot of information that shows that in a dairy in particular, many of these projects will pay for themselves in less than 2 years without incentives. And with our incentives, they'll easily pay for themselves in under a year if it's the right application. We're also focusing on agrivoltaics this year. Agrivoltaics is like conventional photovoltaics, but in this case, you're also growing crops or raising livestock underneath the panels. And so you have this simultaneous production of both agriculture and solar electricity on the same land. And you're not removing that land under the solar array from agricultural production. So there's no trade-off there. You're doing both at the same time. And we have a carve out in our funding this year, specifically for agrivoltaics. But we also provide funding for conventional solar. We've often been pairing it with irrigation pumping plants out on the prairie, but we have also done a number of projects at poultry farms and a couple of greenhouses and various other applications as well. And then, as I mentioned, we've done a number of projects on energy recovery hydropower, and we have several hundred kilowatts in progress right now. And so I have about 50 projects in motion at the moment using the stimulus money. So I want to add, in addition to the few, the number of financing sources and funding sources that Will talked about, the Colorado Clean Energy Fund is another opportunity. Because the USDA grants and the Acre 3 grants are based on a reimbursement basis, sometimes covering the cost during the construction process is very challenging. And the Colorado Clean Energy Fund is one of the ways to get a gap loan to cover those costs until the project is completed when the grants come through. And so we can connect you with those resources as well. But with that, I'll just put in a quick plug for a webinar coming up tomorrow from the Colorado Clean Diesel Program to talk about grants and other incentives for electric powered tractors. And that will be co-hosted tomorrow from 10 to 11 through with CDA. So I think Ellen or Elizabeth may talk about that some more. And with that, I'll open it up to questions from you all.
All right, thanks to Sam, and huge thanks to all of our fantastic panelists today. We'll take just a minute here since we're about at our time to go over any questions. So let's see.
Yeah, and sorry, Elizabeth, Sam and I might have jumped the gun and answered all the questions that were in the queue, but not sure if anybody has any other ones.
Perfect. Yeah, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to drop in the chat now or Q&A. We have one question saying, can you please restate what Sam's phone number was?
I'll put that in the chat here.
Perfect. And thank you. Ellen just dropped the registration for the electric tractor webinar tomorrow in the chat. So if you're interested in joining for that, registration is linked, and as is Sam's phone number. Any other questions?
Not really a question, but again, I would say if you're interested at all in even seeing what's out there at your operation or know someone who might be, the Aggie E program is a free resource. You don't have to follow through with any projects that we identify, but if you're just interested in seeing what's out there, definitely feel free to submit an application.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, everyone who attended. Thank you to Sam, Michael, Will, and Ellen for your fantastic presentations today. This webinar will be recorded and posted on SEI social media, shared with the CDA and Energy Office's social medias as well. And we look forward to chatting again with y'all soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.